Interesting. It's already recording. Gary, did you start that?
I didn't. Maybe it was auto started.
Guess so. Huh.
Just FYI, Justin, I don't know if you're on a different mic, but I hear a lot of white noise and the keyboard clack is extra loud today.
Huh. Thank you. Yeah. Is that white noise back?
It's diminished.
Okay. All right, all right, all right, all right. Let's see if we get anybody else. So here's a question. If nobody that's not consensus joins, we should just cancel this.
This is recorded in public though, whereas consensus things are private.
That's fine. I don't really get a lot of value out of recording something and throwing it out there. You know what I mean? I'd rather like write it up
Yeah.
and
And
present
we
it
want
for.
to discuss not new contributors and the cost of review and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah, and there's no one to really discuss that with. Oh, we'll see. We do actually have some good stuff on the agenda. Just want to be mindful of our European colleagues who are getting to the end of their day. Okay, well, folks are trying to join, so that's a good sign. Okay, it's 5 after. All right. Hi, everybody. I posted the agenda in the chat. Here's one more for anybody that isn't seeing that. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the November 26th Besu Contributors Call. I'm your host, Justin Florentine. This meeting is being recorded. Please mute unless speaking. If you have a question, feel free to pipe up or use the raise hand feature. There's an antitrust notice included in our agenda as usual. How's everybody doing? We have a pretty good agenda. There's a number of things we can discuss with regard to both general announcements and a broader discussion of the roadmap and what are we going to plan to do for Q1 of 2025. So I'm going to get right into this. If anybody has any last minute things they want to add to the agenda, either feel free to add it directly to the document or raise it in chat. Matthew, I see that you have a tidy up the enterprise roadmap. Thank you. Yes, please. I would love to hear a recap of that. I have a a loosely defined bullet point that just says Kaleido question mark, and I think that's all you. Awesome.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you.
that's cool. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, we're happy to cover that.
Beauty. All right, so general announcements. Linux Foundation is asking us to migrate off of Confluence. We just moved to Confluence from wherever we were before, but it's expensive and it doesn't get a lot of use. So this discussion has been ongoing in Discord. I wanted to hear everybody's thoughts as to why do we have a wiki? What do we do with it? And where would we migrate to? What would we migrate to in order to preserve it? So thoughts?
I like Markdown just in general. So like the GitHub Markdown is very minimalist. I really like the idea of leveraging GitHub pages, something along those lines where it's free, common, simple. Just my 2 cents.
Okay. What do people use our wiki for?
On my side, at least, I think it's very useful to have a wiki because sometimes we share a few numbers around performance, and I guess it's interesting, to keep track of the previous blog posts and add the newer ones and have like the improvement from the last ones. And I see that in the wiki we have also the recordings or the recordings of this meeting.
Yep.
Also, other clients have similar wikis as well. I see Reth and Nethermind have their respective wikis to, if not as a bare minimum, just to how to start a client and all that stuff, how to become a validator using that client. And yeah.
So I think we have a line that we can draw between user documentation and developer documentation. And right now, read the docs is really our user documentation. And I think that's very well maintained. And that's where I would expect to see usage guides, startup guides, things like that. Whereas the wiki, I think, has more developer documentation, which would include things like Amezion has described. So Luis, when you say that Reth and Nethermind, have a wiki and they use it, do you know what tool they're using for that? Or is it literally just a blog that they're pushing to? Reth.rs, thank you.
So don't really know the tool that they're using. Maybe GitHub Pages, as Gary suggested. At least for Red,
Okay.
looks like it.
But Nethermind documentation is really good, by the way. Is the way it is structured and yeah, the skin. At least on my side, I like it.
Okay. I'm going to comment on here. All right. Okay, so we still want a wiki. Here's a couple examples of good wikis. And do we think that a minimal implementation, just using stuff written in Markdown and PRs into it, published via GitHub Pages, would be good enough to start? Or do we need the tooling that you get from a wiki tool that includes, easy links? I think that's one of the big things that a wiki tool gives you, right? Is just it encourages you to relink to other content and create a more dense web of content. Is that something that we care about? Okay. Sounds like we don't.
Just something about, is there anything decentralized that is usable enough? Just wondering.
IPFS. It's Ethereum runs on it, right? The Ethereum or IPFS. That's the only thing I can think of.
But not exclusively on Ethereum, but in general, if there is something that is usable enough to be good for us in any way. Just wondering.
GitHub isn't at all decentralized to my understanding, but like the repository itself, Git itself is decentralized. So even if the hosting would be via, the typical viewing of the hosting would be via a centralized provider, like having docs as part of an open source control protocol tool I think that's a good compromise for decentralized.
It's a step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'd be
there
cool
are
to have.
also sorry.
I was just going to say it'd be cool to then expose it over IPFS. Yeah, but go ahead, Fabio.
About Git, I know there are also decentralized project for Git. Maybe it's not very usable like GitHub, but actually was just something to explore and try to make something cool. Actually, I don't know if it's also useful and usable, but something that could be cool for us.
Okay.
I'm not totally sure. I think Red stores the documents under the Red repo. Now that I'm looking at it. So I don't think there's a folder called docs, which might be it. Not 100% sure.
All right. I'll take that as an action item to make a decision try to find something more decentralized. In the meantime, I think we can start exporting things from Confluence and getting it into GitHub Pages. There is an example of it linked in the agenda. you go to besu-eth.github.io/wiki, you can see a real gross non-CSS dump of our Confluence content. So that's, I guess, a starting point. More on that later. It looks like it preserved images and stuff too, which is promising. Okay. Is anybody interested in this subject and wants to take point on it? If so, contact me, because this is probably going to fall to me unless somebody else steps up. Please step up. All right.
Just as a question of ownership, the ask is from the Linux Foundation Decentralized
Yes.
Trusts. It's from Rye.
Yes.
Is there any? Maybe we could leverage some of the have the asker do a little bit of the work as well, possibly.
So he has. That's where the export from Confluence into GitHub Pages came from.
Ah, cool.
So that's the current suggestion. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of current suggestions, migration of our source code repo from Hyperledger/Besu to ETH-Besu. This is an ongoing task. We're pretty much ready to do it. The only risks that Rye and Linux Foundation have brought up is moving the secrets from one repo to the next. Not a big deal. We kind of went through this already when we went from Circle CI to GitHub Actions. So I don't really see a ton of risk there. It's really kind of a question of timing, when to do it, and who wants to migrate their forks and add new remotes. So just to be clear, what's being proposed is that there is a new organization in GitHub called ETH-Besu. I guess I should share my screen maybe. I don't know if this helps or not. GitHub.com/Besu ETH, not ETH-Besu. This would be the new organization that we have. Right now there is 3 repos in it. One is the wiki, which was the example that I was speaking of earlier. We have a governance repo. I think that's where we would put PRs to issue, or we'd rather open issues for agendas the same way that the ETH Foundation does with all core devs. And I don't know what that Besu permissioning smart contracts thing is. But this is where the Besu code base would go.
Does this have an impact on forks, or is this like is the redirect going to be honored for forked repos?
My understanding is that the redirect will be honored.
I'm looking at the agenda on this real quick. Are we looking for like a timeline or consensus or?
Yes, I think we need consensus that we need to move forward with it. And I think we need to set a timeline and schedule the work. And I believe that manifests itself as, hey, Rod, can you do the work? And then we all need to adopt it, meaning updating our remotes, pulling from the new repo if we don't want to go through redirects, things like that. So I would expect, some disruption. There's no way that this is going to be disruption free. It seems to me that maybe the holidays is a good time to do that.
Yeah, the holidays does seem like a good time. Like everybody's gonna have to rebuild contexts when they come back from holidays. Are we talking about like the U.S. Thanksgiving kind of holidays, or more like the end of year, more general holiday period?
Well, what do folks prefer? I myself am thinking like mid-December. Like do
Yeah,
the migration like right before, you know, like do the migration like the 15th-ish of December, and then have that week going into the holiday to deal with the, things that break and fix it. Because we shouldn't be pushing any releases or anything around there, right? Like it should be a fairly quiet time for us.
yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. That if there was something we had to respond quickly to and we were in a broken state, that would be unfortunate because no one would have context and everybody would be on holiday. But I think that if we don't have a lot of updates or changes going out in that time frame, we probably shouldn't expect there to be any significant issues that would need to be addressed over the holidays.
Okay. Okay. So what do we think about, here we go, the week of the December 16th? Kareem wants to do it in January. Why would that be, bud?
Also, Justin, I guess before doing like the change, maybe we need to contact, some of the users or like of the tooling or the tools that are around solo stakers, for example, Tapnode, Rocket Pool, if Docker, Nethermind, they have like tools that get the last release from GitHub. So I guess we need to reach out to let them know that we are going to change.
Yeah, I think we should, but I don't know that there's a rush to do that because everything should be redirected correctly, right?
Well, Docker also, what's the namespace going to be? Will it be lfdt-besu, the same as the repo?
No, Docker shouldn't change. This is only for the GitHub repo.
We're going to keep the Hyperledger branding for Docker?
No, but it would be a separate discussion, a separate project, I think.
Separate project, but it's hard to think about it because if we change the GitHub, we should change the Docker, namespace as well.
Yes. Yes, we should. But I think that becomes, we're going to be operating with both names for an interim period of time across both our source code and our Docker and anything else, honestly.
Okay.
Yes, Kareem. That was my next agenda item, buddy. Thank you. Okay, so before we move on though, December 15th, how do we feel about communicating to LF that they can start our migration from Hyperledger/Besu to Besu-ETH/Besu on December 15th? Okay.
Yeah, I think it sounds fun to me, Justin. Can't see down, sir.
I don't want to pick at a scab, but are we all on board with LFDT dash Besu for the org name? Because the repository is going to be like LFDT dash Besu slash Besu.
I don't think that's true. I thought it was just Besu-ETH slash Besu.
Besu dash ETH. Besu dash ETH slash Besu. Kind of a similar. Yeah, it's a little odd.
Yep, sure is.
We want to have like just a quick poll on how we feel about Besu ETH as the org name.
We could, sure. We had discussed that in the past. That's kind of how we got to this, but happy to reopen it.
Does it have to be dash ETH? Can it just be Besu?
I think we wanted that to differentiate from the client because there would be other things that are going to go under there, like governance, wiki, plugin repositories, other modules, etc. I think the idea was stolen from some other client team, had their repository organized that, or their organization rather, in GitHub organized that way.
Yeah, probably Nethermind.
Yeah.
I think TLDR from my perspective, the starting the migration on the 15th and having that done for the new year, definitely a thumbs up for. Kind of lukewarm about the target repository org name, but
Okay.
yeah, weakly held opinion.
I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure out where in Discord that discussion happened. It might be worth searching the the LFDT Discord for Besu-ETH to figure out where that discussion happened and then reopen it there. All right, so I'm going to say that the org name of Besu-ETH to be further discussed. But we're happy with the December 15th. Okay. Moving on, Kareem insightfully pointed out that, hey, all of our Java package names say org.hyperledger.besu. Yep. I think the right thing to do would be to swap that out with just Besu.
But let me also bring it up that we also have Pegasus on the namespace in some places. So are we going to rename that too?
Yeah, I think we should. I don't think those make sense anymore too. So that's actually not a bad holidays thing, right? Where like one person does a big find and replace and swaps everything. Oh gosh, yeah, except for the, oh man, good point, Kareem. So plugins, definitely. The plugin API module we should probably not touch until we're going to be doing some refactoring in the plugins, more on that later. That might be a good reason to roll in a package rename for that particular submodule later on. Specifically the plugins-API submodule. What other modules? Ugh, renaming things is such a pain in the butt. No, Matthew, there isn't really a downside to leaving them alone other than having to explain what Hyperledger is to every developer that ever touches the code base.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that point. I guess that those conversations might be easier to have than doing the renaming.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not saying that we should necessarily do this. I'm putting it out there as a proposal. But I fully admit this is a ton of work.
Yeah, I guess these kind of things, it's the unexpected work. This feels like there might be more unexpected things come out the woodwork with this kind of change compared to other stuff. Yeah, and I agree. I think with the points on the chat, I think previous employment I've had, we things were renamed so regularly that it was only really external facing things that we focused on for renaming.
Okay. So, all in favor of letting sleeping dogs lie?
Yeah, it gets my vote.
Okay. This feels like the kind of thing you should be able to give to an LLM. Be like, hey, make it work. Okay. Next up on the agenda. Okay, so that was it for general announcements. Roadmap review. All right. So, proposed areas of focus. Now, I have not made any updates to the actual Besu roadmap documentation, and I wanted to have this discussion with everybody before I did that to make sure that everybody was in agreement. The roadmap document is linked to from the agenda. In our discussions here at Consensus, what we think the short term, meaning the first quarter of 2025 roadmap is going to include will be things like removing history for mainnet, specifically to get us aligned for EIP 4444 and some of the non-protocol work leading up to it. We are putting work into the plugin API and the use cases that we think are being facilitated by that are things like fleet mode and our pluggable consensus. Now that last one is via the engine API, that is not through the plugin architecture, but we're thinking about that in terms of modularizing things in general. We have a whole bunch of performance improvements. I don't know that those are necessarily going to manifest on the roadmap as deliverable features and epics, but they are getting a lot of focus right now and a lot of progress is being made on them. And as far as outstanding work, EOF is ongoing. Dan O'Farron has been basically taking the lead on that. He says that it's essentially on hold over the holidays until Pectra DevNet 5 ships. So that will still be an area of focus for Besu. There's definitely a deliverable on that, as well as Verkle. Does anybody have any updates that they want to share on Verkle? I kind of just threw that on the list because I knew it was a thing that we were going to continue working on. but I wasn't sure how much of a priority it is compared to the other things. To me, it seems like it's closer to the bottom, maybe like right below EOF. Um, does anybody want to correct my understanding?
Besu, so we are still working on Verkel. We did some gas cost modification. So Luis is working on the gas cost implementation for Verkel, and now we can follow the last DevNet with Besu. We still have a lot of work on this part because we need to be able to validate block. Today we just import block. We are not validating the state diff provided by the other node. We also need to create block. Today Besu cannot create block, but we are also working on that. And we also need to implement SnapSync, something equivalent to SnapSync in order to sync node. And we also want to have a stateless version of Besu. Today, the current implementation need to have the full state, but we also want to have a way to be stateless with Besu when Verkel will be available. So yeah, we still have a lot of work to do, but we are moving forward, and we don't have any blocking issues for the moment.
Kareem, do you have an idea of like one of those? I mean, you named a lot of things. It's a lot of work, buddy. Do you have like one of those in particular that you would want to include as like a milestone for Q1?
I think maybe it will be something. I have a roadmap in my mind. So one of the idea was to try to have a flat DB based on stem. So one of the first milestone was to be able to follow the DevNet. Now we can follow the DevNet. The second is to be able to have a flat DB based on stem. So now we have an implementation, but we need to benchmark this implementation. It's something that other clients need. They want to have this benchmark because it will be interesting if this solution is working. If we can have this benchmark, we will be able to use this implementation for stateless and also for the sync. So maybe I'm not sure, but one good milestone will be able to have some benchmark on regarding performance of FlatDB based on stem. So having a different tooling in order to have a way to convert the mainnet state into a Verkel state, and like that we will be able to benchmark the current performance with Besu with Patricia Merkle tree vs Besu with Verkel tree. So just to see the impact on performance we will have when we will use the new implementation with the new state, with the new cryptographic libraries, etc. So yeah, maybe that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
I will try to share more. Yeah, we try to maybe share more at the end of the year, if we have more update or something like that.
All right, cool. Anybody else have anything they want to add before I turn it over to Matthew and Kaleido? Okay. Take it away, Matthew.
Hey, yeah, thank you. Thanks, Justin. Yeah, so not a huge kind of update, but I did spend some time tidying up the enterprise roadmap. I'll hit share screen. Hopefully you can see that, can you? That should just be the roadmap you were showing. I just edited it just with a couple of bits. So Bonza Archive, I thought I'd add in there as well, just for an update. I might get some input from Kareem or Gary on that in a second, and the enterprise updates specifically in the roadmap, which I'll open in a new tab. While I find it, I think in terms of Bonza Archive, Gary, I think I'm right in saying the testing was going pretty well that you were running, and the testing I've been running has been going fine. If syncing a bit slower with mainnet, but is there anything useful for you to kind of share on the call?
Sure. Yeah. We have we've discovered a couple of regressions that crept in. I think you're aware of it, obviously. Just with regards to self-destruct on historical blocks. And those PRs, there's been a little bit of a back and forth about how the regression crept in, but I think this morning we merged in the last of the fixes for historical block regression that we found doing full sync. Like you said, the sync is taking quite some time. The Bonsai archive mode is not really that much slower than just a typical Bonsai full node sync. So that's promising. I've been working on recently a state root calculation deferral for full sync that really increases the performance of full sync dramatically, especially around the pre-Byzantium blocks that have intermediate state roots calculated for every transaction. And Kareem and Amezian have been working on further iterating on parallel transaction processing. So all of those combined, we're starting to see some reasonable archive sync performance. So we're talking like 2.5-ish weeks to do a full archive sync on mainnet. But we haven't gotten all the way there yet. So we'll see once we get all the way up to head what the performance is, and I'll keep you updated on that as we progress through it. But yeah, in general, the archive PRs seem to be working quite well.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for the update. Yeah, so I think I guess the main update for this audience is that hopefully that's going to merge in the coming week or two. Assuming no issues are spotted as it finishes syncing with main. So yeah, thanks again for Gary for running those extra tests just to prove it out. The enterprise roadmap. So I guess most of you are familiar with the layout of the roadmap in Confluence as it stands. So what I tried to do recently is just do a bit of an update on the enterprise side of things, kind of following the now, next, later pattern. People will be aware generally that the experimental empty block PR got merged. So we're kind of running that in several places, testing it out in enterprise settings, and it's kind of going fine for now. Bonsai Archive just had that update. That's something that we are kind of very keen to see in. So hopefully we'll be getting that in the near future. And then some work around QBFT, which is pretty cute, pretty enterprise specific. And I thought actually maybe in kind of combination with giving an update on the roadmap, some of you will have maybe noticed in GitHub or on Discord that a colleague of mine, Banu, has been getting more involved in the Besu code base, again with a kind of an enterprise slant, but kind of starting to touch more and more bits of the code base. Banu, I think you said you're happy just to mention a couple of bits around the QBFT kind of fixes, improvements you've been looking at.
Hey man, yeah, so we've been looking to improving QBFT recovery when like more than when we don't have quorum and a few nodes go down. When they come back up, it takes really long time for them to come back up, for the consensus to be back up and running again. So I have a couple of like features for that. One of them is in PR, that 78381, and that was actually an issue, earlier reported issue. So yeah, that is in, yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking for the right one. I think this was the one.
No, that's
no.
That's still open.
It's still open. Okay.
Yep.
Maybe that's the
Yeah.
one open.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this currently would be an experimental option to kind of speed up the synthesis process. I think can go over this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other one is also similar in nature, and I mean, once I have this one merged, I can raise a PR for the other feature where we can broadcast like round change message multiple times within the same round to speed up the new nodes catching up with the existing nodes.
Yeah, so for those who aren't familiar with QBFT, the rounds double in time each time. So after a few rounds, you might be going 30, 60, 120 seconds between a node saying to everyone else, I'm moving up a round. And the issue you can have is if a node sends out, I'm just about to move up a round just before another node comes online, then the new node that's come online isn't going to hear from that other node for the whole next round, even though it's on like round 7 and it told everyone who was present at the time I'm on round 7. New nodes aren't going to hear that. So a proposal around QBFT recovery is just to periodically say I'm currently on 7, not just I'm changing from 6 to 7 now, but I'm still in 7 in a way that wouldn't be too chatty on the network, but would make make it possible to kind of remove some time windows where if you get unlucky, you can have these big gaps in QBFT recovery. Thanks, Barney. So yeah, I just wanted to introduce
Just to
yeah.
add a perspective, like if the recovery for the new nodes, even in round 5 and 6 is like 10 minutes, these changes bring it down to like 10 seconds.
And that's, we believe that's completely within the kind of the QBFT spec. There's nothing breaking the spec here. And they're going to be behind flags for the time being anyway. Okay, thank you, Barney. Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to make kind of introduce Barney to people because you see him chipping in on GitHub and Discord a bit more often. Thanks, Barney. And then yeah, just some of the things coming next. So Sally was mentioning this on Discord around moving QBFT SnapSync out of experimental. So we just raised an issue to do that. And again, I think that's one thing Barney might pick off. We've been testing QBFT with SnapSync and it's been fine. I think the next big chunk of work we'd like to contribute is around the archive work, but looking at state proofs for historic state. And I think this may be a kind of a prereq to fully removing forest DB. So that will be, another slightly longer bit of work from our side. And then, sorry, go on.
Do you want to add the state proof in another PR, in the same PR as the first one?
Yeah, I'd suggest in another PR because partly the current PR's got pretty big and it's been quite long running. And I think there's merit in having bonds archived without state proof for a lot of people. So that would be my suggestion if that sounds like the right thing to do, Karim.
Okay, yeah.
We'd like to do a bit more load testing. We did spend some time on performance testing and had a lot of help from Amezian on that. I think we'd like to spend some time more on stability when you load up the node. Previously, we've tended to test QBFT chains with pushing it hard, but at a rate we're pretty sure it's not going to cause the transaction pool to blow up and fill. We do see some issues if you push it harder than we know it can cope with, given the configuration and the resource spec of the machine. So we'd like to do a bit more of that testing, and we've seen some bugs in that space where a node isn't totally stable if you push it and push it and push it to the point where you start seeing some edge case bugs. So we'd like to do a bit more of that. And I guess if I skip, won't cover the later stuff too much, but one thing I thought worth bringing up was I mentioned in previous calls we have a QBFT acceptance test which we run every time we do an upgrade. We run periodically, and it's in the open source code base, but it's not run as part of any of the Besu pipeline. And I just wanted to get some feedback on whether or not people thought we could look at running that once, maybe when a release is being done, maybe running it on a schedule weekly or something. It's about,
Is that the QBFT soak acceptance
yeah,
test?
that's the one. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see
It's,
any problem with that, folks. What do we think?
for context, it's about an hour and a bit to run QBFT and an hour and a bit to run IBFT2, and currently runs both, one back to back. We could kind of pare it back because it's a parameterized test. We could pare it back to just running one of them in the scheduled run, so it's an hour and a bit, not 2.5 hours.
Will we just schedule to run nightly?
Yeah, I mean, I think from our point of view, as frequently as the community thinks it's not blowing GitHub action time and it's not causing problems, we think it's reliable. So we hope it doesn't cause false negatives or wasted effort investigating failures that are intermittent. So if that happens, I'd suggest that we remove the scheduled run and we look at making it reliable. But we run it quite often, and I think my view is it is now pretty reliable as a test.
Okay. All right, so I'll take an action item to make sure that it gets added to the release process, and then we can look into, so at the very least, it should get run before release. And then it would mightly also be helpful to run it, nightly or weekly.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I mean, Karim makes a good point that just for the release, if it fails, maybe it's a bit late. I'd hope that we can achieve both, and that it's a bit of a early
I don't see
warning
why not.
sign that an unexpected change has regressed, something in QBFT
Yeah.
or an enterprise setup.
I don't see any reason we couldn't do both.
Great. Yeah, I think that'd be really valuable.
All right.
So that was pretty much everything on the roadmap. There are some future things, maybe moving empty blocks out of experimental. The only other thing I wanted to mention briefly is some of you be aware that obviously Tessera is on the path to being deprecated and removed. Some of the consensus folks I met in Bangkok and some of us from Kaleido gave an overview of a privacy solution that Kaleido has been working on, this open source, and we think delivers all of the function without the downsides of Tessera. So I just wanted to raise the fact that there is a workshop specifically around this privacy solution. Again, it's all under a Kaleido branded event, but it's all an open source project. All of the code here is open source, and we thought it was probably worth raising with people on this audience in case this was of interest to Besu maintainers to attend or just be aware of. I think that's everything from me, Justin.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay. All right, moving along. Let's see, release updates. Heads up, the plugin API will be getting some refactoring in the near future. Things will be deprecated. Right now, we're deprecating the Besu context class. We don't have an ETA on when it's going to be removed yet. So right now, it's just being marked as deprecated. And this is kind of just a general alert that the plugin API and the plugin framework will be getting refactored in the future, and to expect deprecations, and to please socialize that amongst people that you know that care about plugins, and solicit feedback. So obviously we want this to be an engaging and interactive refactoring process, so please raise any issues with us on Discord. We don't have anything concrete to announce at the moment, other than things are starting to move forward. Anybody else have any release updates, work updates that they want to add? Not really sure what a work update is. I guess what I just gave with regard to plugins would be a work update. Here's stuff that we're working on, right? Anybody have anything that they're working on that they think people should know about?
I can talk quickly about parallelization. So we have a specific flag, experimental flag that allow Besu to run transaction in parallel. So we saw some significant improvement with this flag, and it's already in the main branch. But we created another PR. So currently we are testing this PR, and in this PR we are improving the conflict detection in order to have a way to do more parallelization. Yeah, Amazon shared this PR. So in this second PR, how we are trying to optimize the conflict detection, it's by not only checking account modification, but also checking slot modification. So thanks to this modification, we'll have, thanks to this new PR, we'll have less false positive, and we will be able to do more transaction in parallel. So if you want to see the PR, the PR is open. You can look at the code. And as I said, for the moment, we are doing more tests to be sure we don't have any issue. And maybe in the future, we'll have a blog post to explain how it's working, or if people are interested.
Thanks, Graham. Anybody else? Okay. Last thing, other business. We've noticed an uptick in small, inconsequential PRs being opened against Besu. Some of them kind of feel like they're submitted by LLMs. You know, obviously we don't have any proof, but we want to kind of open this discussion to the community because we do want to solicit PRs from people. But we also have to take the time to review them, and we have to review them a little more extra carefully when they come from first timers or folks that we have never heard of before, etc. So, you know, have folks noticed this? Do anybody have any thoughts on this? I don't really have a concrete policy in mind to propose, but it is a concern. You know, there are some incentives out there that could be driving this, like airdrop farming. You know, folks feel like if they have at least a couple of PRs that have been merged into Besu, there might be some money for them in the future. So we get things that are like, you know, fixing typos and such. Those are less of a concern when they are obviously not, you know, introducing any bad issues, but there can be some that take a little bit more thought and become time consuming for us as developers. So does anybody have thoughts on the matter?
Yeah. Since I also raised this before, I just shared 2 PRs that are not correcting some typos or fixing grammars, but I are changing code. The things that is also interesting is that they are not related to any open issue or good first issue work that we maybe have to do for Besu, but they seems to be unrelated to anything that is on anyone's backlog. And looking also at the format, they seems very similar. And since they are touching the code, today, for example, I spent half an hour to try to understand if just a very little change could actually have some side effects. And so just wanted to raise this and also listen to other experience about that and what could be an action from our side. So I don't think we should decide anything today, but since this seems to be a trend that is increasing lately, we should at some point evaluate if we should take some or just ignore them or take some action, because what I'm worried about is the effort and the time we consume doing those reviews that actually are not adding a lot of value usually, like in the case of the two PR that I just shared as examples. Yeah. So if anyone has any experience, any thought about that, please share. So in next call we can see if the problem is increasing and if we need to take actions. Yeah.
I think it's fair to shift the burden of work a little bit onto the reporters. So, like some trivial task that's simple for a human and maybe doesn't scale well, or an LLM isn't going to get right, just to make sure that before we put significant effort into it, that this isn't a low effort spam PR. Like even the silly LLM riddle thing as a message, or like one of the PRs was remove the -a in the array initialization script. Like that type of thing, I think would be an easy way to filter that out. Could you describe a scenario where the scenario where this is going to be a problem? How is not merging this going to be an issue? And just kind of invert the work on PRs that you find suspicious or spammy.
Yeah, I did actually, after I reviewed, I found there could be very edge cases, but I don't think so. That should be fine. But actually, why changing this since it's working, and it could create some strange edge cases. So I asked on the PR I added a comment to discuss about my possible edge case, and seems the response is not actually answering my question. So it seems like I don't know, maybe this is sophisticated enough to also try to to find a good answer to our request. So at the point that I think we should collect some experience and understand better how to check which are if the effort is worth, and if the change is also something that make a real benefit to the code.
Cool. Thank you, Fabio. And we are over time. Very, very productive meeting, everyone. I have updated the agenda with comments on conclusions and action items that we have come to throughout the course of this meeting. Feel free to check that out, and see you all on the Discord.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
See you around, everyone.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.